Would your aircraft insurance cover you if you did this? Well, it's Caleb here from Air 101, and we're gonna talk about it. Well, as we know, many people are talking about Trevor Jacob and that he had an engine failure in his Taylorcraft and ended up jumping out of his aircraft with a parachute. Also, there are many videos talking about whether he did this on purpose or if it really was an accident that happened. But today, I'm not gonna overly get into that. Instead, I wanna talk about the insurance aspect of this whole entire situation. I wanna talk about if somebody had done the exact same thing, but for example, they had lived in Canada and they had bought a Canadian aircraft insurance policy. If they had tried to put in a claim after this accident happened, would it have been covered? Yes, no, maybe. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Please note that I've also spent a lot of time researching this topic as I have found this topic extremely interesting. I've also talked to different claims adjusters and read through policy wordings to try to give you the most accurate information as possible. So in saying that, I hope you like the information that's in this video. And remember, I hope that you never ever crash your aircraft like Trevor Jacob did. But if you are going to crash your aircraft, make sure the only crash that you have is crashing right into that like button and giving this video a big thumbs up. Also, if you stay to the end of the video, I'm going to show you something that you should never do with your aircraft, even if you're just trying to show off to your friends. Now, let's first talk about the situation with Trevor Jacob, and let's say that it was a legitimate situation where he had an engine failure and he really needed to jump out of his aircraft with a parachute. If he had bought aircraft insurance, would there be coverage? In order to answer that, we need to look at what the insurance company would look at in order to determine whether a claim should be paid out or not. We need to first start off by reading what one Canadian aviation insurance policy wording says on this topic. It says, we will not pay under any of the coverages for any loss, damage, or liability if at the time of the occurrence, A, your aircraft is loaded outside of its permissible center of gravity limits or maximum takeoff weight limits. B, you are engaging in any operation or activity which violates the Criminal Code of Canada or of any country in which the aircraft is operating. Or C, the occurrence is in flight and the aircraft does not have a valid and current airworthiness certificate, flight permit, or other legal authorization to operate in flight issued pursuant to the laws of the country in which the aircraft is registered. Now, this refers to a Canadian aviation insurance policy, but realistically, this wording should apply to any insurance company and their country's aviation regulations. So let's first say, giving him the benefit of the doubt, and this crash was an accident. The things that the insurance company would really have to check is this. Did he have a skydiving license to jump out of a plane? Because if he didn't, then it would have been more dangerous to jump out of the plane than just land the aircraft. Did he have a current medical to be flying that aircraft as a pilot? Was there a current annual done on the aircraft? I know watching one video, they said that the aircraft was well maintained up to 2018, but after that, they couldn't really find anything else about that aircraft. Now, if he had violated any of these things and he had bought, let's say, liability only or all risk flight and ground coverage for his aircraft, if he had tried to put in a claim, it most likely would have been denied. Also, he would have to prove that the accident did not result in gross negligence. For example, was there a reason that he had to just jump out of the aircraft with a parachute instead of trying to do a forced landing somewhere? Was the aircraft on fire and he could have possibly burned up? Or had one of the wings of the aircraft fallen off and the aircraft was spiraling to the ground, which required him to jump out of the aircraft with a parachute? Well, as we can see from the video that was posted on YouTube, we can say that the answer is no to any one of those situations. All he had was an engine failure at a high altitude. It looks like he had more than enough time to find a landing spot for his aircraft. Although maybe he would have either destroyed or damaged his aircraft, most likely he would have been totally fine. And the thing is, I have been doing aviation insurance for 10 plus years, and in all the accidents that I've seen, majority of the situations, the individual that had to do a forced landing ends up being fine, albeit maybe their aircraft is damaged or destroyed. So by jumping out of the plane and allowing it to crash instead of trying to do a forced approach is most likely a case of gross negligence, and in this situation, the claim would most likely be denied. Also, we need to remember the Canadian Aviation Regulation 602.01, where it says we are not allowed to operate an aircraft in a reckless or negligent manner, which means if you had an engine failure and you had high enough altitude, then don't just straight away jump out of your aircraft with a parachute. Instead, Instead, just try to do a forced approach and find a place that you can land safely. Because instead, if you just jump out of your aircraft with a parachute and let it fly off and crash, it would be reckless and would most likely be considered gross negligence. Okay, enough about if it was an accident. Well, now let's look on the flip side and say that this crash was not an accident, but instead was done on purpose. First and foremost, there would be no coverage under the aircraft insurance policy wording because you cannot do a crash on purpose and expect the insurance company just to pay out a loss. So what could it possibly mean for a pilot that caused a crash just like this situation and had done it on purpose? They would have to pay for recovery costs for the aircraft. If the aircraft leaked gas everywhere, they would have to pay for the environmental costs. If the aircraft caused a forest fire or third-party damages, they would have to pay for these costs. They would have to hire a lawyer to protect them in court if they were sued for damages. They would have to deal with Transport Canada and possibly receive the following consequences as per Transport Canada's webpage, such as increased monetary penalties, suspension of aviation documents, court-imposed fines, jail terms, forfeiture of aircraft, which of course doesn't really apply to the situation since the aircraft is completely destroyed. This is just to name a few, and to be honest, I could just go on and on about it. But what can we learn from this very situation? Well, I tried to look up quotes and sound wise about learning from other people's mistakes instead of making your own mistakes. And I really couldn't find anything online that would make me sound really smart. So instead, all I could come up with is this: don't be dumb and crash your aircraft on purpose. Also, pilots, please remember, don't jump out of your aircraft with a parachute if you have an engine failure, especially if you have enough altitude to find a suitable place to land your aircraft. Also remember, keep your medical current when you're flying your aircraft, and keep a current annual done on your aircraft so that you can follow the certificate of airworthiness. And now, if you do plan on doing something like this on purpose, start saving your money now, as you might have to pay out a lot of money to go get the aircraft, pay for any third-party damages, hire your own lawyer, as well as possibly in the end losing your precious pilot's license. Now, this is a very rough situation that Trevor Jacob has gotten himself into, but because of the video that he has done, I look at it this way. Because of the situation that has happened, it prompted me to make this video to talk about the importance of following the aviation regulations in your country and the importance of not intentionally crashing your aircraft. But now, in saying that, I'm glad that you made it to the end of this video, and congrats for making it through an insurance video for more than 5 minutes, because now you are going to learn something very important that you should not do with your aircraft. Make sure that you don't do this. You should not be skimming your wheels along the water like in this video. If you do these things, as well as try to wing walk or parachute out of your own aircraft, even if you have another pilot flying the aircraft, but you decide to try and climb onto your wing and jump off, if you don't have approval from Transport Canada, this is what can happen to you. You could, as we've already talked about in this video, your claim could be denied in this same situation as well. You could end up paying out a lot of money and possibly losing your aircraft, and you could possibly end up getting in trouble with Transport Canada. But it's possibly more than this, and that's what I want to talk about right here. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because if you post this video online, the insurance company could possibly see this video, and they could end up deciding to possibly get off risk and not insure you anymore, which means you would not be able to get aircraft insurance from that certain insurance company. But remember, insurance companies in a lot of situations talk about when they've seen stuff like this. So in the worst case scenario, you might not be even able to get insurance from any aviation insurance company. And yes, I have seen it where the insurance company has seen a video of somebody water skimming with their tires on a lake. And the next thing I know, I ended up getting a phone call from the aviation insurance company telling me that I need to have a serious conversation with this customer. So make sure that you follow the regulations in whatever country you live, like in Canada with the Canadian aviation regulations, etc. And remember, we can all learn from this Trevor Jacob situation. Don't jump out of your aircraft with a parachute if you are able to still land your aircraft. Realistically, I don't know if he even had insurance on his aircraft or not, but I wanted to make this video for the rest of you. And now we've been able to analyze whether if an individual had bought aircraft insurance and they had done the exact same thing, if they had done it either on purpose or they had done it by accident, whether a claim would be paid out or not. And now, by the end of this video, I hope you have the answer. Well, I hope you learned something. Stay safe, have fun flying your aircraft, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.